Hello world, we're back here in my holodeck and we are checking out kind of the complete sound system that we've got going here. We finally added the subwoofer and right now it's being powered off a single channel TPA 3116D2. It's the one on the floor here, but it's the same that I had bolted on the back. So you can see right here, I have one bolted on the back, but I have one on the floor because I actually have this Behringer B215D. The amp blew up on this, and it's kind of what I've been talking about this whole series. The amps aren't really repairable, so I ended up just converting this into a passive speaker with a crossover. The best I could do was a 2400 hertz second order. It sounds pretty much like original. The big problem though is, like I've covered before, this 15-inch woofer breaks up a lot, and it's hard to hear, but there's a lot of resonance there. That screen resonates, the woofer frame resonates, the cabinet resonates, so it just has not a very clean sound to it. And you'll be able to hear that on the comparison test. Now that we have a full range system, you'll even notice when I was previously testing this 15-inch woofer, a lot of people would think, oh, it must play deeper than this 12, and nothing could be further from the truth. At about 90 hertz, this subwoofer is louder than this woofer. So this has a lot more deeper bass, which is good if you're DJing smaller events and you want that better sound quality, that deeper bass, especially with modern music. So let's go into testing this. I'll get my recorder set up, and we're going to do the test before where I switch between speakers here. It's from the same amp, so there's no difference in EQ or gain or anything. It's literally the amp, no EQ, directly connected to either speaker, and I'll highlight it with a flashlight. So let's get on with that test. Okay, so here we're going to conduct the sound test. I'm going to be highlighting the speaker that's running with this flashlight here, and I'll put the name of the track in the description so you can look up the original source. We'll be playing between these two speakers, obviously, and I think you'll hear a big difference in the bass response on this speaker. Even though this sounds loud, this one, the Behringer B215D, sounds louder, it definitely has a lot less bass, and it's very screamy. Whenever the syllables hit, it really just screams in your ear, and that's the breakup due to the woofer. So let's get on with this test.
Can't you remember yeah. Oh, can you believe I am for real? Can you believe I am for real? Can you
Okay, so that was the test. Well, now let's get to the slides. Okay, subwoofers. PA speakers typically roll off at 100 hertz. That's pretty much what this Behringer is. And as I said before, at around 90 hertz, that 12-inch subwoofer is actually louder than the 15-inch woofer in the Behringer. A lot of good 15-inch speakers typically roll off at 70 hertz, so pretty much they always need a subwoofer. And that's why I kind of picked the subwoofer and turned it into a three-way passive speaker. It's basically what this whole party speaker is. It's basically a passive speaker with an oddball combination of impedances that allows for the top speaker to be more portable and the subwoofer to be easily added on, and to have different types of amplifiers be able to work with the speaker. Most notably the mobile amplifiers. The impedance of this whole system ends up being around 2 ohms, but it's kind of split between the top and bottom speaker. That doesn't make too big a difference as long as you run these 2 ohm stable Class D amplifiers, or if you run a car amplifier, it will just be 4 ohm and 4 ohm. So lots of different amplification options, but the test you heard was it as a purely passive speaker with a passive crossover in the subwoofer. So PA subs are typically crossed over anywhere from 120 to 160 hertz. And most professional concerts high pass at 50 hertz, so you're actually not getting that much bass below 50 hertz. The nice thing about the Rockville K512 is its port tuning is actually at 50 hertz. So if you actually include an active subwoofer channel with crossover control, you can actually boost the power down to the 50 hertz range to get a pretty flat response, a -3 dB at around 48 hertz or so. The Rockvilles, though, start rolling off naturally about 120. Those are the 8-inch tops. That's pretty typical of vented PA speakers, 120 hertz roll off. And I've heard the 12-inch Rockford PA sub, there's no deep bass. Even though it claims a 92 dB per watt efficiency versus our K5 car subwoofer at 88 dB per watt, it has a physically large cabinet, so it's probably better. Like in this case, you can see, like in the previous video, I actually have another set. I'm designing this party speaker as a 2.2 stereo set, so instead of just one 12-inch sub that's really big, I have two 12-inch subs that are smaller. That helps make up for the loss in efficiency. And I can definitely tell you that the subwoofer that I'm using perfectly keeps up with the 8-inch top, especially when you include the crossover, because that drops the woofer's efficiency a dB or so. And really the port helps add to the output. Ports can usually be used to either extend the bass or to boost the bass at the port tuning frequency. In this case we're boosting the bass, so it kind of matches the 8-inch top. We're not getting as deep a bass, but 50 hertz is basically as much as we need, because most concerts high passed at 50. So car subwoofers, they're the best at two things. You got deep bass and compact enclosures. That makes it easy to set up and really gives deeper bass, which more modern music has. It has a 88 dB per watt efficiency, but a 50 hertz ported box. some like the car guys or the hi-fi guys say like that's way too high a port tuning. But in our case, it's used to give us a bump in the mid-bass response, which gives you that punchiness that people expect for the nightclub sound. And the nightclub sound is kind of what we're going for our party speaker. And also there's room gain. Most likely you're going to be running this speaker indoors, so you get a little boost in the bass region for running indoors. So really, it boosts the effective efficiency to about 93-94 dB per watt at around 70 Hz. And that's basically where we need to be to keep up with our 8-inch tops. It is a little boomy, but just barely. It's pretty well tightly controlled. Definitely has the clubby sound though. Nice strong bass, you can feel it in your chest, and specifically hard-hitting snares you can really feel in your upper chest, and that's kind of a really nice effect of having a really good time alignment. And the time alignment has to do with basically running a proper crossover in the subwoofer, which we're always going to be doing, and having it phase matched with the lower bass port output of the top speaker. It's really complicated, and almost you really can't hear it too much on the recording, but it's distinct when you're in front of the speakers. The snares really hit you in the upper chest. Also, with additional power, the car sub can be EQ'd flat to around 40 Hz, 48 Hz. I mean, 48 Hz would be the -3 dB point if you run a good crossover setting, but I've had it down to 40 Hz. It'll still play like cleanly down to 40 Hz. The woofer won't unload at those frequencies because of the low port tuning. PA subs can't typically play down to 40 Hz. It's really inefficient to do so and requires a lot of power, and the PA subwoofer will just end up distorting at that point. And any PA sub that is tuned that to go that low is gonna be huge. Party speakers again play smaller areas and don't need as much power. Again, we're not going for maximum power here. Having a little more power for bass is good, and that's what a car amp with the crossovers are really good for. So all in all, it's easier to focus on deep bass than it is just to focus on being as loud as possible. So just this little note here, the Rockville K512 enclosure focuses more on compact size and efficiency, but it's not bad when it's EQ'd or using the crossover as a makeshift EQ, because the ideal PA port tune of 50 Hz gets us exactly where concerts typically are crossed over. So basic rules, subwoofers here, the priority needs to be efficiency. The top speakers are around 94 dB per watt. In reality, with the crossover I put, it's around 93. It knocks off about a dB in overall response of the woofer. Yeah, you can use the PA style sub like I said, but it lacks the deeper bass. Our Rockville Party Tower concept is for definitely better SQ, means deeper bass, especially with modern music again. They're like EDM, hip hop. It's going to reach into the like 50, 40, sometimes even 30 Hz. But generally like around like 50 Hz response gets almost all music, including hip hop. So in this case, a car subwoofer really can be preferable, because to get a 15 or 18 inch subwoofer, a PA subwoofer is just, that box is going to be huge. It's going to be like 4, 6, 8 cubic feet for a single subwoofer, and that's really big. There's a little rule here called Hoffman's Iron Law. It deals with subwoofers. You can have a compact sub, an efficient sub, and low frequency extension, the deep bass, but you can only pick two. That's just you can do research on that on your own. Hoffman's Iron Law always holds true with subwoofers. So the Rockville K5 has an 88 dB efficiency, and the typical 50 Hz high pass of Pro Sound venues and the Party Tower designed for smaller venues just happens to match. Car subwoofer, obviously I picked it Makes for a smaller, compact, and easier to set up system. Using the vented enclosure can either extend the frequency response or boost efficiency. We're using it mostly to boost efficiency, not extend to the lower bass response. Again, if we tried to extend to lower bass response, we'd be needing a bigger box, and that's harder to set up, harder to carry around. The top speakers use a vent to lower their woofer's response from around a natural roll-off of 200 Hz to about 120 Hz. Ports add a phase delay from about 0 to 90 degrees. It's kind of like in a crossover. The subwoofer output actually needs to match the frequency. So above the port tuning frequency, the phase is going to match basically the phase of the signal. But since we're running a crossover, a physical crossover in the subwoofer at 120 Hz, it's going to induce a phase delay. And that phase delay happens to match that 0 to 90 degree range of the top speaker. And this is what really leads to that cohesive bass, where you can hear the snares, like a hard-hitting snare, in your upper chest. It's a really distinct sound that I remember off of the older JBL three-way PA systems. We're talking about the SR4375A here. These are 1970s design speakers, and these emulate it pretty well because they have the titanium compression driver, an 8-inch mid-bass, which is exactly what the SR4375A had, an 8-inch mid-bass, but instead of a 15-inch woofer, we're running a 12-inch subwoofer for its compactability. So the Rockville K5 12-inch vented subwoofer is also the most economical. That's kind of like why I picked it. Not only does it match the brand that we're using, but it's $100. You're not going to get a component like just the speaker, a subwoofer, for $100, let alone the box, which will usually cost as much or more than a budget subwoofer. So it costs less than the 12-inch Pro Sub. So like you can get the 12-inch subwoofer and add the crossover, but I think a lot of people will also want to run a car amp with built-in crossovers, or the 2.1 amplifier, mini 2.1 Class D mini amplifier that also has a crossover. So again, keeping the options open, but you can really drop the budget down by going with the Rockville K5, a car amp, a server power supply, and the Rockville SPG84. That combination right there, the subwoofer, it's about $100. The top speaker is around $65, so we're at $165 for the speakers. Add another $75 for the amplifier, so about $100 with amplifier and a server power supply, and you've got basically a full power system for around $265. You add in a $40 mixer there, and for around $300 you can have a really, really good speaker that will easily keep up with the JBL PRX 15-inch two-way PA speaker. It'll definitely beat the Eon. The Eon is kind of weak in my opinion with poor sound quality, and now since we've been focusing on sound quality so much, the only thing really left to do is kind of prove out how these perform outdoors, and that's going to be in another video. Right now, the subwoofer is kind of simple, a 2-pager, so keeping this one a little shorter.